Yeah, it's, you use the word pressure. I think there's a heightened level of responsibility to so many people, right? Living aboard the International Space Station is an international endeavor, and there are so many people all around the world that have put resources and time to making this possible. And every day when we wake up, we come in contact with hardware, with experiments that are the life work of somebody somewhere. And that level of responsibility, is very high. We feel like we are stewards of the space station. It is our responsibility to take care of it. And then, as you mentioned, it's our responsibility to inspire the next generation. As I always say, when you get to your goals, don't forget to send the elevator back down for the next people. It's really important that we show a path, that we create a space industry and an exploration that other people can join in on. I think a lot about the kids in Washington schools, the students at our universities, and what kind of job markets and what kind of opportunities they're going to go into. So oftentimes as an astronaut, I think of it more like a relay race. I am fortunate enough to be able to hold the baton right now, and I have a responsibility to this equipment, to our ground teams, to our country, to our international partners, to do that job well, so that when it's my time to pass off the baton to the next generation, that I leave it better than I found it.
And I understand this is the second time you've held onto that baton. What's the difference between the last time you were on the ISS and this one?
It's interesting how things have evolved over the last 6 years since the last time I was on the International Space Station. I think prior to the flight, one of the biggest differences that I noticed was that on my first flight, I launched in 2018, in December of 2018, all I could think about was the launch. We did all this training for the space station and everything else, but really mentally and emotionally, all I could think about was that launch, because it's like that's that thing that you want to do your whole life. And so it's just like this line in the sand. You don't see much past it. And I think on this trip, I really had a better understanding that, hey, launch and getting to the orbit is like 10 minutes. And then you've got this whole 6-month mission afterwards. And so I think in preparation, I was much more prepared for everything that kind of came after it. As far as being here and working here, I think I got, right in the swing of things really quickly. Within a day, it was like I'd never left. I kind of knew some little methods for living here day to day. I think that's one of the toughest parts when you first arrive. Is like, where are my socks? How do I get dressed in the morning? What is my routine to go work out? And so all those little things, it was really great to just get here and be able to start being effective right away.
Do you have something that is your favorite part of being on the International Space Station? You spent your whole life dreaming to get out to space. You're there. Is it the simplistic things, the day-to-day life, or is it the actual experiments, the work? What is it that's the most exciting thing up there right now?
Yeah, I think every single day, every single month on Space Station, we are having scientific breakthroughs. And I really encourage people, if you haven't heard that much about it, to go read about the International Space Station and some of its major breakthroughs. In fact, you can do an internet search for Space Station breakthroughs, and you can find some of our top 20 scientific breakthroughs. And I think one of the cool things being here, as opposed to 6 years ago, is watching how some of the technology has developed. Where we go from starting to grow protein crystals, like, 6 years ago we were asking, can we? And now we're moving on to like, hey, let's try to scale this protein crystal growth so we can really help scientists on the ground with disease pathology research. And so I think for me, what the coolest part of waking up every day here is that I know that there's a higher purpose. NASA's motto is for the benefit of all. And every single day when my crew and I wake up, everything that we do is for the benefit of all. The experiments that we're running, the scientific data, it's not proprietary, it's shared. NASA data is shared because we are doing it literally just for the betterment of humankind, and getting to be part of that and knowing that there's a higher purpose is, I think, really meaningful and really special to be part of.
When you talk about the higher purpose, I do wonder what it's like. So many of us, we have a job, we punch the clock, we go home. This is a very different lifestyle. It's a very different thing. You're talking about this in such a worldly way, talking about how it connects so many countries, so many people. When did you first start to realize my job is going to be much different? And I don't mean in the astronaut sense of way. I mean just in the connectivity to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I really love that question because I think it's something that I have a much bigger appreciation for on this flight than on my first flight. And I think part of it is because I worked so many ground jobs at NASA between my flights. You know, most of our time as astronauts are not spent flying. This is my second flight. I've been at NASA for 12 years, and this is my second space flight. I was going to say only, but this is my second space flight. There's no only there. It's incredible. But I think, you know, just in the course of our year-to-year jobs at NASA, we do so many overseas trips. We work in so many small teams with people from all different nationalities. You know, I just saw some of the photos from our underway testing for the Artemis missions. You know, how are we going to recover Orion? And I looked around at these pictures and I was like, I have worked with half of the people there, even though they're from Japan and they're from Europe. You know, I recognize talking to every single day are from people all around the world. And so I think that this flight, it's been really good having that appreciation. Every time when I pick up the radio and make a radio call, sometimes it's to Houston, but other times it's to Munich or to Scuba or to Huntsville in Alabama. You know, we're talking to so many different teams on the ground. It's not just our one team. So I think just over time, I've gotten an appreciation for those teams.
I wonder what the most fun part of this job is. Realizing that this was a lifelong dream, realizing that this is something people shoot for. Is there just that aha moment when you were up there that you realized, I did it? This is what I've always wanted.
Yeah, there's definitely some very profound moments. I think like looking out the window when you first get to orbit and seeing Earth from the outside is always a very, very profound first for every astronaut on every flight. I remember my first one on Soyuz when I launched in 2018, and I looked outside and I saw my first sunrise. I didn't even realize that the blackness outside my window was space and Earth until the sun started peeking over the curvature of the Earth and the sun, you know, and I was able to watch it. We were going so fast I could see kind of the night-day line just moving as we moved around Earth, and I was just struck with, oh my gosh, I've made it. And on this flight, it was just as profound. You know, we got out of our seats in Dragon, and I floated right over to the window, and I looked back at Earth, and it was like, wow, I'm not on my home planet again. And it is really profound to look back and actually just realize how small our world is. And I know that sometimes that can sound cliched. We say it's a small world, but our world really is small. And we are all so interconnected and dependent on one another that it gives you a perspective of how important it is for us to work toward the goodness of one another. Because none of us can be good, none of us can be great without the greatness of others.
And I'm sure you've delivered that message to a lot of kids over the years as well, knowing that you're from the Spokane area, knowing that people from Washington State are cheering you on. Do you have any moments where you get to chat with those kids and you think, wow, this could be the next me, this could be the next astronaut that's out there in space?
I definitely, every time I talk to classrooms, a lot of times I think, man, I never got this opportunity. Like, I'm so glad that I get to be here with these kids, and maybe, you know, one of them is going to listen to me and realize kind of what it takes. Maybe they'll start believing in themselves a little bit more, regardless of what their dream is. You know, whether it's to be an astronaut or whatever they're dreaming of, whatever their passion is, you know, really just sharing with kids that the most important thing is to trust yourself, to listen to the people around you that believe in you, because all of us have people that believe in us. And then there's always voices out in the world telling us that it's not realistic, it's not practical, that's not for kids like you. And you know, you can just choose to not listen to those voices. Choose to only listen to the voices of the people that believe in you. And one of the neatest things, now that I've been, is going to show my age a little bit, but some of the kids that I talked to early on in my NASA career are now working in the space industry. I've run into a couple of them that maybe went to my high school and now they work in the space industry at NASA, or they picked up internships. And you know, and they'll say, you know, I remember when you talked to my class when I was a sophomore, and I'm just so profoundly impacted. I think I get a lot of meaning in life when I get to be part of somebody else's story. And so those are really meaningful moments to me. And I hope that maybe somebody listening today child or adult, will take the message of, hey, believe in yourself.
Curious about the non-space or scientific side. Do you ever just have any moments where you think, boy, this wasn't what I thought it was going to be? I imagine that there's downtime, personal time when you're not on the clock, even if there are only a few minutes or seconds in between. What are those times like? What do you do in the International Space Station when you don't have a task at hand?
Yeah, you know, one part of living in space is recognizing that human psychology was not built to be working 24/7, right? And so we actually carry, week to week, we carry pretty normal business hours, maybe a little longer than normal hours. We have about a 12-hour working day between our morning meeting and our evening meeting. And the ground keeps us very busy during those times. You had mentioned earlier about punching a clock. We don't punch a clock, but we certainly follow a clock on our schedules, getting from task to task. But then it's really important that we have the downtime. We have downtime in the evenings. We get most of our weekends free. And even during the day, there's little kind of moments of what we call gray space, just a little bit of free time in between activities. And those are really important just because as human beings, we may be off the planet, but we are not away from our lives. We still have family and we still have friends and we still have, issues that arise on Earth that we need to take care of. And so our downtime looks a lot like most people's downtime. Maybe we're not going to concerts or going out to eat, but, we certainly have access via technology to watch sports events. We can video chat with our families and friends, kind of show them around the space station. And then we sit around and we talk to each other about nothing to do with space, right? We just get to know each other as people on a deeper level. So a lot of living in space is also kind of living your personal life in space as well.
Well, I hope you get a chance to catch some Mariners games while you're up there, at least keep tabs on the team. They just got underway. They're 2-2 if you haven't heard yet. Hopefully I haven't messed up any tape delays. I wanted to know, I understand that just the idea of seeing gravity is always something that pulls people in. Did you want to give us a demonstration of what it actually looks like when you're untethered there in the space station?
Sure thing. You were actually asking about kind of one of my fun moments, and I will tell you this. Sometimes we joke that us astronauts, we develop a lot of skills that are never going to help us on Earth, but one of the cool moments is when you can jump from wall to wall and catch other handrails without even using your hand. Your feet just kind of develop this method of finding the handrails and stabilizing yourself wherever you go. So I could walk toward the camera, or I could walk away from the camera. That one's, there's a lot of science equipment on that side, so I'm not going to stick my feet over there, or some of our scientists might get a little concerned. That one wasn't quite as graceful, but those are pretty fun.
It's one of those things I never thought about until just recently. Obviously, the whole world was watching this latest crew coming back down to Earth after spending so much time in space. And I guess sometimes we almost have gotten too used to people traveling to and from space, but I was watching folks in wheelchairs after landing, and it didn't dawn on me until that moment, like, wait a second, after you've been in space for a while, those first steps back on Earth must be a lot different than those steps that you just showed us there.
It is really different, and I think one of the things that I really remember thinking after landing last time, I spent about 6 months on station last time, and after I landed, I remember just thinking how strong of a force gravity is, right? So I'm holding this microphone, and if one of my crewmates needed it, I would just push the microphone gently over to them, and they would catch it, and that's how we move a lot of cargo on space station. Now, if I were to take that cargo bag and throw it as if I was dropping it on Earth, I would really have to put a lot of force into it. I hope that makes sense. But when I got back to Earth, what I realized was this pull of gravity, I could feel it in my face. I could feel my watch on my wrist pulling my wrist down. When I picked up a tablet for the first time, I thought it was made of lead. It was so heavy. And so gravity is a very strong force. And the way that our human body adapts, both coming to space and going back to Earth, is really phenomenal. Because the most it takes us when we come up to space, if you're a little bit sick, it might take you 4 or 5 days to get used to it. But that's really incredible when you've spent 40 years on Earth. And then conversely, going back to Earth, your body and your muscle takes a little bit of time to adjust. I think for me, like my lower back, your back has kind of some squishy parts in it, your spine, and so when you get back to Earth and that gravity kind of compresses everything again, it can be a little bit painful. But you're absolutely right. Coming back to Earth is quite an adjustment for the astronauts.
So I know in the past you were a rugby player. I imagine no rugby within the first couple weeks of getting back on Earth.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to forgo the rugby for a little while. I do think that the lessons that I learned playing rugby on, getting to a point of exhaustion and keep going, or taking a hit and keeping going, it's something that I often relate to doing a spacewalk. When you're out and working in the suit, you have a really high metabolic rate over a very long period of time. The suit can be rigid, it can be unforgiving. And so you might get bumps and bruises here and there. And just like a rugby match at those times, it's most important to key in your mind and do mind over matter, and use your kind of problem-solving skills to make yourself more efficient, so that you're not physically exerting yourself as much.
Well, Colonel McClain, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time up there on the International Space Station, talking with myself and also our Fox 13 viewers. We do appreciate you back here in the state of Washington. Thanks again.
Thank you, and have a great day in the Pacific Northwest.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event. Thank you.
Thank you to all participants. Station, we're now resuming operational audio comm.